Hello and welcome to VTC's Coreal Painter 12 training series. My name is Jason Moranto and I'll be your guide throughout this course. The most important thing that you can understand about working with Coreal Painter is that it is a natural media emulator. And there's really two groups of people who are going to be coming to Coreal Painter for the first time. The first group of people who are going to be coming to Coreal Painter are going to be people who are coming from a natural media background, meaning that they're going to have worked with real watercolors, real oil paints, real pastels, real pencil, so on and so forth. And they're going to have certain expectations of the program. And what I will say about the way that Coreal Painter works for those people is that it's more like a synthesizer. If you're familiar with musical instruments, a synthesizer is basically a keyboard, but it can sound like many different instruments. However, it really isn't a true replacement for all of those instruments. Even though it can mimic the sounds, it's not really the same. It doesn't have quite the same richness, quite the same depth. It has some limitations to the way that you make the notes, and it's just not really the same thing. So if you want a guitar, it's better to pick up a guitar. And if you just want something that sounds like a guitar, but you want it to be nice and easy so that you can use it for multiple different things, then you would use a synthesizer. And Coreal Painter is kind of the same thing. It's not a replacement for real oil paints. It's not a replacement for real watercolors. It's the ability to work with oil paints and watercolors and pastel and pencil all in the same piece in a way that you can never do in the real world. However, all of those mediums are going to be a little bit different than they are in the real world. So there's going to be an adjustment, there's going to be a learning curve, and you're not going to necessarily always be able to use the same techniques that you used in the real world in the computer. Now that said, the computer has a lot of really great advantages that you're going to love. One of the biggest ones is undo. I can't tell you how many times when I've been working in real watercolors and real oils that I want to do something and then I try it and then I realize, oh gee, boy, I wish I hadn't done that because now I've got to spend a lot of time fixing it. Well, in the computer, you don't have that problem because you can always undo it. The other thing that's really going to make working in a program like Coreal Painter really wonderful is access to unlimited art supplies, meaning all of the brushes that you could possibly want, all of the colors that you could possibly want, all the mediums that you could possibly want. And anybody who's ever worked in traditional media knows how expensive brushes and paper and canvas and paint really is. So this is a really great bargain. For the cost of Coreal Painter, you get a software that's basically an entire art supply store built into your computer. Now, for people who are coming from more of a traditional CG background, meaning programs like Photoshop or Illustrator, they're going to be looking at Coreal Painter and they're probably going to find certain things to be a little bit odd about the program. For one thing, they're going to find mediums like watercolor, which are going to take time to process, and they're going to be used to working in a program like Photoshop where everything happens more or less instantaneously. And they're going to be frustrated by how long the program is taking. But that's the way that watercolor works in the real world. It takes time for watercolor to diffuse. It takes time for it to become what it is. It doesn't just happen instantaneously. And so you have to give Coreal Painter room to be what it is. It's not a photo painting program. It is a natural media emulator, and it's going to emulate a lot of those properties of the natural media. So you have to come into it with the expectation that this is not Photoshop. It's not going to be Photoshop. It's going to be Coreal Painter, and it's going to give you some really marvelous effects that Photoshop never, ever could. And I really, honestly, in a lot of ways, prefer to draw and paint in Coreal Painter over any other application that I've ever found, and that includes Photoshop. Now, for people who are old Coreal Painter users who've used several versions back of Coreal Painter, you're going to find that Coreal Painter 12 is a brand new thing. I mean, it really bears hardly any resemblance to previous versions of Coreal Painter. It has so much new functionality, and so much has been added to the user interface and taken away from the user interface that you're going to find that you're really going to have to learn everything all over again. And that's really the reason why I structured this course the way that I structured it. I set it up so that we would cover all of the core fundamental features in depth in this training series. And again, like I say, the reason why is because everybody who's going to be coming to this training series is going to be looking at Coreal Painter 12 for the first time in one way or another. The other thing that I will say right up front is that this is not the comprehensive, complete training, meaning that I'm going to cover all of the core fundamental features in depth in this course. But what happens is because I only have a limited amount of time to produce one of these series, I had to go ahead and say, okay, we're going to do more advanced Coreal Painter stuff in the future in another training series because it's just not possible to cover everything that I need to cover in the roughly 8 hours that I have available to me for this course.